Good morning, welcome back. It is a beautiful May 27th out here. As you can see, the sun is shining, the clouds have cleared off, and it looks like we should have some relatively good weather for this week. So this is going to be an interesting week. We still got lots of seeding going on for at least a few more days. Combine that with some of the earliest seeded crops, especially barley, hitting herbicide timing. There's going to be lots going on in the fields this week. This field just got seeded to canola last week. We're starting to see some emergence. This is some pretty dry, sandy land here, so you can see we do have some emergence here in the row. Now, as the weather gets hotter and drier this week, we are going to struggle to kind of keep that moisture in the seed row. You can see I scraped down about a ½ inch here. We're still in the moisture, so we're looking good as far as that goes. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more emergence here in a few more days, but we also do have lots of kochia and stuff like that starting to emerge here as well. Lots of these barley fields now, we're hitting 3-leaf stage, so I'm starting to put in recommendations for some of these guys here now. You can see we're doing pretty good here. We got our first tiller starting down here, so things are looking good as far as that goes. So in the next week or so, we're going to be at herbicide timing in here, and you see we have a whole bunch of Russian thistle in here. There's patches of kochia throughout the field as well. There's some volunteer canola, a little bit of everything else, so we'll get this cleaned up in the next week or two, and with the moisture in the ground and these good growing conditions, this field is going to develop pretty quick. Well, the pea fields have certainly developed quite a bit since I was here last week. We are now, for the most part, this one here, if we discount this side branch here and the scale node, we're basically in 3 to 4 node stage, so we're looking pretty good there. You can also see we do have some nodulation starting to form on here already. I'll zoom in a little bit here. So you can see we got some nice healthy little pink nodules in there, so that's looking pretty good. We did use Verdesian granular inoculant here, so these guys are off to a great start. Now herbicide timing, if you want to apply Viper and peas, is 3 to 6 nodes, so we got to be pretty fast. These have moved 2 nodes in the last week, so we're already 3 to 4 node in here, so we need to get on this one here this week. Seems like it was just yesterday that I was dodging thunderstorms, and now it already feels like we're back in drought again. Well, you know, a couple days at 20 degrees, and we are back to cement here on the surface in quite a few of these spots. Oh, with all that moisture the last few weeks, and now some nice warm temperatures, we're getting a heck of a crop of kochia coming up in crop here now. So of course, this was all taken care of pre-burn. This has all come up since. Our barley is now hitting about 3-leaf stage, so we're going to be in here probably next week to take all this stuff out. We're probably going to try some of that new Talonor from Syngenta. We did try some of it on this farm last year and had great success with it. So we're going to use it again this year on a few fields, and hopefully it'll help clean up some of our kochia. Well, the grasshoppers are just starting to flush. I'm just starting to find these tiny little guys. They're about the size of a grain of rice. Anyways, they're showing up right along this fence line, this headland here. On the left, we have oats are seeded, and on the right, we have pasture. So these guys just barely starting to show up, so keep an eye out for them. I'm sure a few more days of hot weather, there's going to be more of them coming out. Well, it's a gorgeous Tuesday out here now. We're supposed to hit 25 degrees, and a lot of these fields have been planted into canola. We are starting to see some emergence on these guys now, so these guys are looking good, but you can also see we have a whole pile of kochia that is emerging. Now, that's not a huge deal in this field because this field is actually a stacked trait canola. So we're going to come in here relatively soon. We're going to hit this with Liberty while these guys are sub 4 inches, and we should be able to get really good control on them with Liberty as long as we get good coverage. And then, because it is a stacked trait, we can come in later on with Roundup, and we can control a lot of the other weeds like any grass species that do emerge. But right now, it's mostly kochia. Lots and lots of new weeds coming up this week. We got lots of this guy showing up here and there. So this is, usually I call this poverty weed. So not really a huge concern in crops. See it quite commonly in fields that are rotationally corn a lot, but it's not particularly difficult to control. We also, of course, have some dandelions coming up. We got some lamb's quarters over here, lots more lamb's quarters here. Here you can see we got some buckwheat with its first real leaves out. So you can see those traditional like arrowhead style leaves. Lots more lamb's quarters here. Lots more buckwheat coming up in various stages. So lots and lots of weeds this week. Now that the weather's a little nicer, the gophers are certainly getting themselves seen. You can see we got a pretty good gopher patch here in the dryland corner of this barley field. So there's quite a few mounds here, lots of families, lots of little baby gophers starting to run around, which are called pups, by the way. If you have not controlled your gophers by this point, it is pretty difficult to get any sort of control with poison at this point. There's all this fresh barley or, canola or other crops to eat. They do not want to eat your bait. Your best option is to use something like a trap, like a Lee's Trapworks trap that we carry in the office, or just the good old-fashioned 22 and shooting them. Well, we had a few thunderstorms going around Tuesday night, but nothing that dropped any damaging hail or large amounts of water anywhere that I know of. I'm down here by McGrath this morning, a little bit cooler down here and windy, and as you can see, our fall rye is starting to head. So we're not too close to flowering yet. We still have a few days left to go before we start to see the first blooms, but we're getting close to that fungicide application in here, where we're going to hit this with Miravis Ace to hopefully reduce the risk of ergot in this. Got some really good emerging canola here. You can really start to see the rows developing in here now, but unfortunately they're kind of being blocked out a little bit by the high volume of wild oats emerging in here. So this is a stacked trait canola. We were planning on going in here with Liberty first to get, kochia and other small broadleaf weeds under control, but the wild oats are much more of a concern, so I think we're going to go in here with our glyphosate app first instead. Here in this field south of Lethbridge, we have a really nice stand of canola coming up. This is probably my most advanced canola field right now, mostly in the 2 to 3 leaf stage, looking really good in here. There's the odd little bit of flea beetle feeding here and there, but nowhere even near threshold values. Although you can see we've got a really good flush of wild oats coming up in here. As far as wild oat identification goes, and when they're still small like this, you can quite often still see that wild oat seed coat on there. Sorry, it's hard to keep things still in the wind here today. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. You can see that nice brown to black seed coat on there. So that's a defining feature of wild oats, as well as when you look at the leaves, they will be curling counterclockwise, which is different from most of the other cereal species. So in this field here, because this is not a stacked trait field, this is a Liberty only field, we're going to be coming in here with Liberty right away, and in order to control the wild oats, we're going to have to add something else in. So we'll be adding in probably a clethodim product like Centurion at about the 30-acre rate to try to get these wild oats under control. Well, I've managed to outrun the storm for now, and I'm in a field where we have some emerging barley, and I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but there is a few strips and patches of very yellow barley that is emerging in this field. You can see here we don't look quite normal here compared to this row, and that's just due to seeding depth. This field was mucked in some very wet conditions, and now you can kind of see that effect. You can see just how deep this barley was. It was right up to about here. So she was seeded really about 3 inches deep in this spot in this particular row, and that is causing the barley to be a little bit weak when it comes up, and that's leaving it susceptible to things like temperature banding. And it's just, barley's dramatic. It really just likes to show stress. It is going to be perfectly fine now that it is emerged. Yes, it is a little bit weak, but give it a couple days of decent weather, this stuff will perk right up and you won't even notice a difference. Well, I think that'll be it for this week. It's been a very busy week, what with recommendations and seeding and herbicide applications all going on at the same time. I feel like I took very little video this week, so it might be a little bit of a short video. I will throw in a bunch of pictures from customers sending in pictures for weed identification, so I'll show some of those here. And other than that, we'll see you next week.